why learning to read or shooting a gun is so hard for you? The secret might be in the asynchronicity in the dominance of your eye and your hand. Hi, my name is Lysanda Garcia, and I'm an integrative developmental and educational specialist, and my focus is to help you reverse the learning and behavior challenges of yourself, your child, or a student that you serve. In today's video, I am going to talk a little bit about brain dominance and show you how to test it. But first, hit the subscribe button below so you'll be the first to know when I post a new piece of content. Okay, so you're probably familiar with hand dominance. We all know for right or left-handed. Actually, some people might be right-handed for writing and left-handed for sports. In that case, it's possible they were forced or convinced or somehow otherwise chose to write with the right hand, but maybe are truly left-handed. That happens actually more often than you think. It's also possible that they're just dominant for some types of tasks with one hand than the other. Your left brain is a little bit more in charge of fine motor skills, which is with writing, and your right side of your brain is a little bit more in charge of like gross motor in athletics, which would be in like left-handed. So that's possible that you're truly right-handed for writing and truly left-handed with sports. It's not good, by the way, to ever force a child to write with their right hand if by nature they should be left-handed. They used to do that, and it can actually cause the children to stutter. And that's what happened. You know, there's a movie, The King's Speech, and I think that was Queen Elizabeth's father. Was it King Edward or somebody? And that was what the whole movie was based on, was that he was stuttering, and he hired this guy who he thought was a speech pathologist to help him get over his stuttering. But when writing, we should have a dominant hand and a helper. And when that's happening, so that means that one hand is actually doing the writing, the other hand isn't down on the ground, you know, or to the side. It's actually on the paper. It's called a helping hand. So notice if your students or your child, if the other hand is just kind of off to space doing nothing. So they both should be in accordance, but one should be dominant and one should be the helper or the follower. There are people who are ambidextrous, but it shouldn't be their natural state. So some people, for example, I know somebody who, when at one point in time had a cast on the right hand, they couldn't write and they had to force themselves to learn to do a lot of things with their left hand, and now they have really good skills with both hands. There are people who can draw. In fact, a great video, here's a YouTube video, look up what's it called? What's that movie called? The Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption two-handed drawing. There's a guy who draws both characters with pencil drawings. There's Morgan Freeman and whatever the other guy's name is, and he's drawing them both at the same time. It's beautiful. You'll be amazed. He does it more than once, and it's wonderful. But so there are people who can do that, but it shouldn't be your natural state. Naturally, you should have a dominant hand and a following hand. And in this week, tips and tricks on Wednesday, I will show you what you can do to help a child that hasn't seemed to have determined a natural hand dominance yet. And that should happen around, age 5 and 6. So check that out this Wednesday. So what you can do to kind of help encourage the child to come to have a dominant hand and to kind of come up with that naturally. And besides the dominance of the hand, we also have a dominant eye, we have a dominant ear, we have a dominant foot, and we have obviously a dominant brain hemisphere that you're probably very aware of. So you probably have heard of brain dominance being right or left brain. There are some misconceptions around that. So one never exclusively uses one side or the other. However, there are areas on one side that are in charge of specific things. And when we don't have good access to those areas, like when we're under stress, then those sides won't work well, like for sounding out words or decoding or knowing math facts, which is on the left side. So when we're under stress, we tend to block blood flow to our weaker areas. And when the left hemisphere is blocked, then that tends to be kind of more problems that you'll notice in school with learning. And when the right hemisphere is blocked, it's more kind of that gestalt, gross motor, athletic, creativity. I mean, you're technically creative with both hemispheres, but the being theatrical and charismatic and those types of things. In order for the brain to be more efficient, most efficient, the hand, eye, and ear and foot ideally should be on the same side. And each side is controlled by the opposite hemisphere. So if you are right side dominant, then that's the left hemisphere that is doing that. And so if the dominant hemisphere is on the same side, the information goes in the dominant ear, for example, and has to go back to the hemisphere to process the information. And if it goes back, it creates a slight lag in processing. So if you are right hemisphere dominant, but you're right ear dominant, you're getting your more of your information like in your ear. It's kind of going to the left and has to go back to the right so you can process it, and that creates like some kind of a lag. And so there's some mismatch or some delay. It can cause a delay in processing. So why does that matter? Well, when reading English, we sweep our eyes from left to right when we're reading. Some languages go this way, but we go this way. So it's natural for our right eye dominant, it's natural for our eyes to sweep this way. If you're left eye dominant, the left eye, it's natural to sweep from right to left. So learning to read can be really hard English if you're left eye dominant. And so what some kids do is they kind of are suppressing one eye in order to do so. And it doesn't really mean they're covering their eye, but they're kind of just suppressing the processing or the visual intake from that eye. Subconscious, they don't know it. When you shoot a gun, you want your eye and hand dominance to be on the same side, because otherwise when you are shooting a gun, because when you shoot with your hand, this eye, is going to be looking over. So otherwise, what people have to do is, if they are left eye dominant, they literally have to close their eye and they have to line up over to shoot so they can aim very well. There is an incredible book, an incredible gem in order to help you know how you or your child or your student may be experiencing learning if you have a specific dominance. It's called the Dominance Factor. I thought I had it with me. I have it somewhere else, so I'm showing you right now somewhere in this video a picture of the book, but it's called the Dominance Factor, and it's by Carla Hannaford, and it's really great. And what you do is, inside, you literally can look up any combination. It starts, I think, by hemisphere, and then it goes to, let's say, eye, hand, and you can find any combination of dominance. And then you can look that up and you can read how that might impact learning or your experience. And most people, when I show it, it seems to jive pretty well. You may or may not have that experience, but I think it's really good. My oldest son, very ADD, so very classic ADD, is going to be right side dominant, and the hemisphere is on the right side. So imagine, so the left hemisphere is not accessing very well, and everything has to process back to the right. So the goal in life isn't to change their dominance, but to understand how they might be perceiving the world or approaching learning. I have heard that you can lateralize if you do enough activities. I have personally not seen that happen, but the goal isn't to change your dominance. If they do, then that might help them, but it's about more understanding how they might be perceiving the world and approach learning. Or if you're a teacher, what would you have to do in order to help them access the information better. So children with mixed dominance can be helped with movement programs that focus on regulating the nervous system, balance and coordination, for example. A person with ADD, the inattentive type, not the hyperactive type, because the hyperactive type really is more left brain, and the inattentive type is more the right brain. And they often, like I say, have complete right side dominance. So helping to reduce stress that may be causing the left brain to be switched off, or vice versa, in a sense, can be very helpful. All right, so let's talk about how do we test our dominance, because obviously our hand, we probably know what we write with. However, think about, even though you write with your right hand, what hand do you want to throw a ball with? Okay, so that's kind of the easy one. The foot, think about or watch, your child, just ask them to kick a ball and see what foot they want to kick with. Do a cartwheel. This one surprised me because I thought I was all right-sided. However, if I go to do a cartwheel, which by the way, if you're my age, I don't recommend it, because a couple years ago, I actually, out of the blue, 20 years, 30 years later, 40 years later, I did a cartwheel outside, one cartwheel. The next day, I couldn't get up until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I had so much vertigo. Okay, so, but your child can do a cartwheel. So if you could imagine yourself doing a cartwheel, what foot would you lead with? I lead with my right foot. I was very surprised. And my son, my autistic son, he did the same thing when he was in gymnastics. If you were to go up the stairs, if you told your child, okay, go up the stairs, what foot might you want to start with? That one's a little hard because we tend to go up the stairs with every other foot, and we're a little bit used to that. For your ear, what I always do is I tell the kids to go to a closed door or to a wall, and I say, okay, so-and-so's on the other side, they're trying to talk to you, can you put your ear up to the door and listen? If you hand them a phone to do that, they might choose the ear of the side of their hand. If they're right-handed, they might choose their ear. Because like my husband, for example, is right-handed, but he has a little bit of hearing loss in his right ear. And so when he uses the phone, he needs to use the left ear, but if he wants to if he has it with his right, he'll literally do this. But most people don't do that. So they'll use their dominant hand. So I always just ask them to go to the wall and put their ear against the wall, or I'll hold a phone pretending I'll say, can you put your ear to the phone? But I don't really ever do that anymore. I just tell them to go to the wall. As far as your eye, this is the kind of the tricky one. So what I do is I always tell them, so across from where I am, I see a round clock. I have a clock. I tell people to put a hole, or I have an index card with a little hole cut out that I just use all the time, or even an old CD has a hole inside of it, or they can just make a hole here. And I tell them to put the hole so they can see the object that is far away inside the hole. And there's two ways to test this. One way that I usually use is just to pull it back and still looking at the object, and then eventually you can see that it goes over one eye or the other. The other thing you can do is literally close one eye, and the eye that can still see the object in it is the dominant eye. So either way works. Okay, so if this seems helpful to you, you may be interested in a brain gym class, because we talk a lot about whole brain learning, reducing stress, so we have access to both hemispheres. It's a series of 26 exercises, but there's a whole system of balancing. So especially if you are a teacher and you're working with a group of students, or maybe you are a gymnastics teacher, or anyway, so if you work with a group of students or just for yourself, you may be interested in Brain Gym. If so, click on the link in the bio in order to put your name on a waiting list so I know when I can make a class. This class, again, is perfect for parents, teachers, athletes wishing to improve performance, and just about anyone interested in restoring balance to their body and brain function so that learning and everyday life is easier. I used to go into classrooms, and most children are not interested in learning. Most children are interested in sports. If they're in a sport, they're interested in sports or friendship. So we would always do the activities and goals and about improving our sport performance. So that's really good too. Okay, and until the next video, again, I post these brain videos on Mondays and my tips and tricks on Wednesdays, and make sure again that you subscribe so you know when my next video comes out. And until then, I will see you later. Bye-bye.